Coming up, we're in Las Vegas for the 2022 Reservation Economic Summit. We're talking to chairmen from the Nisqually and Shinnecock nations, and more from a thought leader in Indian country. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is a proud supporter of Indian Country Today. Students at Cronkite News and Gaylord College at the University of Oklahoma cover Indigenous communities together. This important work is distributed by more than 100 news organizations. This collaboration provides a much-needed boost to coverage of Native American communities nationwide. Learn more at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amarawa Hopa. Thank you for joining us. The ICT Newscast is on location at Caesars Palace for the 2022 Reservation Economic Summit. This is the homeland of the Nuuvi, also known as the Southern Paiute people. Let's go to the headlines. We begin in Washington, D.C., where a top lawmaker is calling for more protections for Indigenous women. Last week, U.S. Senator Lisa Murkowski co-hosted a roundtable discussion on public safety and justice in Native communities. The conversation was held by the U.S. Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. Lawmakers talked about the 2022 provisions for the Violence Against Women Act. They called for support behind the Not Invisible Act, as well as Savannah's Act. Both laws aim to tackle the missing and murdered Indigenous women crisis.
The steps that we have taken here as a committee with the Not Invisible Act, the Savannah's Act, what we did with the bipartisan effort and a good, strong effort on the reauthorization of VAWA 2020, I think we're moving in the right direction.
The roundtable included leaders from Indian country. Federal officials from the Department of the Interior and the Bureau of Indian Affairs were also in attendance. In Argentina, a landmark criminal trial has found the state guilty of a massacre of more than 400 indigenous people nearly a century ago. In the country's northern Chaco region, people were living partly enslaved on a plantation owned by European farmers. In 1924, two indigenous communities were protesting the inhumane living and working conditions of the enslaved people when authorities opened fire. Responsibility has never been officially acknowledged for the Napalpi massacre. It took the lives of hundreds, including children and elders. Now, advocates are aiming to bring visibility to the trial.
For us, it is very exciting since a lot of our struggles were linked to the Napalpi massacre, the genocide of our people. For us, this process that is being carried out is very important, which was a struggle for our brother Juan Chico, who was a native of the area, and that we accompany him in all his processes through the foundation that we have organized to be able to reach this stage, and thanks to all the academics and different professionals who have joined to reach this judicial instance.
The federal judge in charge of the case has ordered historic reparations, but that does not include financial compensation. The judge is calling for the massacre to be added to school curriculum and for continued efforts to find the remains of victims. President Joe Biden rolled out 4 key appointments last week, and one of them is a Cherokee citizen. Casey Sixkiller has been named the regional administrator for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Region 10. The EPA's regional offices ensure the views and needs of their area are incorporated into the agency's national policy plan. The region is located in the Pacific Northwest. It includes Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, as well as 271 tribal nations. Previously, Sixkiller helped to establish the Cherokee Nation's Washington office, and he is the first Indigenous person to serve as deputy mayor of Seattle. Well, different Indigenous artists have been setting up their booths at Res 2022 this week. ICT's Caitlin Onawa-Boycell met one Acoma Pueblo citizen who has been attending this event for over 10 years. Take a look.
I just enjoy coming out.
Susan Saraceno drove over 9 hours to get to Las Vegas to make sure her artwork didn't break. She told ICT the reason she keeps coming back is because of the people.
And I enjoy meeting and talking with people and sharing my artwork.
Susan has been using her pottery skills for over 27 years now and says all her work attributes to her culture.
Well, with the Acoma pottery, you'll find two types of pottery on my side. I work with both the traditional hand clay coil pots, which generates back to many generations of our history and to our people.
Pottery from Acoma Pueblo is gathered traditionally. It takes 2 to 3 days to hand make just one item.
Go out into the mountains and we gather our materials, our clay, go out and gather rock formation and it's a bit preparing. It's not very easy. We dig the clay and mine it from a cave, and they tell us to go out with clear mind, strong heart.
In Las Vegas, Nevada, Caitlin Ottawa, Boycell, ICT News.
And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, from Washington State to Long Island, we're talking with tribal leaders. Plus, her list of accomplishments is long. We're joined by Lillian Sparks Robinson from Las Vegas, Nevada. We'll be right back. One could argue that there's never been a more passionate advocate for treaty rights than Billy Frank Jr. The Nisqually citizen led the Washington State tribe in protecting the environment as well as subsistence fishing rights. Joining us today is his son, Willie Frank III, who is the chairman of the Nisqually tribe. Hi, Chairman. Thank you for being here.
I'm honored to be here today and have a chance to talk with you about some of the exciting things we're doing in Nisqually and the amazing statue project that we're working on in the state of Washington.
Let's just jump right into the statue project. I understand that the Clinket, Washington State lawmaker, Deborah Lekanoff, is leading some efforts to honor your dad. Tell us about that.
Well, we definitely got to give Representative Lekanoff a shout out. She's been a great supporter of Nisqually and, of course, a very close friend of the family. And to have a Native American pushing this issue, but also just to see the bipartisan support in this issue is huge. You know, it says a lot about what my father did over his life, but also the fact that he brought both aisles together. And that was always something he was so amazing at, was bringing people together and telling our story as Native people.
Tell us how feasible this statue is. Where is it at in the process? And I understand you have to raise some money to make this happen.
Yeah, so we have to raise $500,000, $500,000. We had our second meeting last Tuesday, and I'm the chair of the committee. And we have a great group on this committee from Democrats, Republicans, Lieutenant Governor, Senator, Congressman. It's just a wide variety of folks. And also, you know, last week I wanted to make sure that I had enough to get Charles Wilkinson and Dick Trudell on there as also, you know, to have that knowledge on the tribal side as well, to make sure that we do this right and honor my dad right.
Do you have any time frame in terms of when the statue could be?
So the timeline of now, it's December of 2024. So everybody better get ready to go to DC here at the end of 2024 to celebrate this great honor.
And this statue would be in Statuary Hall, right?
It would, yes. The Marcus Whitman statue would be brought home to Walla Walla, and we'd take a statue of Billy Frank Jr. over. And we're in the process now of thinking about what this statue is going to look like. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who've had a chance to meet my father, and really, you know, the goal of this is I hope everybody can feel some of that Billy magic.
Yeah, and
That's
I imagine you'll work with an Indigenous person who would actually make this statue.
100%. It's got to be an Indigenous representative representing us, you know, and I know that's what my father would see. And we're coming up on 50 years of the Bolt decision, U.S. versus Washington, 1974. 2 weeks ago, I was able to have Governor Inslee, Senator Cantwell, and Congresswoman Strickland on the Nisqually River, showing them the work that we're doing, but showing them what my father started and many others. You know, and so here we are 50 years later, you know, we have the governor in our boat. That's never happened before. So you're starting to see the changes, and you're starting to see people open up and want to be more engaged with our tribes.
Yeah, and that is important in Washington State, of course. I want to talk about sort of your dad's legacy, specifically in treaty rights and subsistence fishing. Yeah. Where is the tribe at now, based off where he left off?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. In 2012, 82 years old, he's still fishing with us on the Nisqually. So that tells you, where his heart and his passion were. And here we are, every day we're still fighting to protect our treaty rights and sovereignty. We used to have 7 months on the river fishing, and now we're down to 12 days if we're lucky. So we're seeing that the change from us as our, who we are as Native people. My father at a young age, he always talked about the importance of treaty rights, tribal sovereignty, but more importantly, the salmon. If the salmon are not healthy, we are not healthy as human beings. And we're seeing that in the state of Washington. The work that he did, arrested over 50 times. And it wasn't just him. There was many others that, were a part of this. And he'd be the last one to want any kind of recognition for this. He'd want us to continue working hard, continue doing the work that we're doing. It kind of comes full circle. My grandfather, Willie Frank Sr., he was our chairman back in the 1960s, and my father was on council, and now I'm the chair. So you're seeing that's how Indian country works. It keeps circling up, and really what we want to do is tell that story, but get folks to understand that he could have been one of the most bitter human beings in the world, getting arrested, getting beaten, getting tear gassed for exercising his treaty right, doing something our people have done for thousands of years. But he wasn't. He took it the complete opposite way and brought everybody together, whether it was state, federal, or tribal. We brought us all to the table.
When you're looking at your dad's legacy and the lengths he would go through to reach and to advocate for his people, what does that mean to you now that you're the leader yourself?
It means I better toughen up a little bit more, because what they went through, that experience, none of us will experience that. The blood, sweat, and the tears for exercising their treaty rights, something that, it's ours. We have that right, the usual and the custom grounds for our fishing. And we're still battling every day now, and it's going to continue. It's not stopping. So I hope the goal with this statue and being able to tell this story, it's not just my dad's story, it's not just the Nisqually tribe story, it's a Indian country story. The work that he did wasn't for just the state of Washington, it was for Indian country, let alone the folks in the state of Washington. I couldn't think of a better Washingtonian to go back and represent the state than my father.
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting to see that. And you said 2025.
2024.
2024.
That's the goal. The end timeline is December of 2024. So I told all of our Nisqually tribe elders, everybody, get ready. It's going to be the biggest party in D.C. So Indian country better be back there representing.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you, is what the reaction has been. We only have a few seconds left.
And the reaction, I don't even think it's hit me yet, to be honest. I don't think it's hit our family yet and the tribe. This is history. This is one of our own at Nisqually, but one of our own natives going into the hall, and somebody that we all grew up with. We all saw. You read stories about him. It's not the 1800s, it's present time. So it's pretty exciting.
It is really exciting. Well, Chairman, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll keep in touch with you.
Definitely.
Entrepreneurial success takes more than just luck. Lillian Sparks Robinson's 20-year career in Washington has prepared her to run her own business called Wopila Consulting. She is the past commissioner of the Administration for Native Americans. She is also a former executive director of the National Indian Education Association. Welcome, Lillian. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're at Res 2022, and the entire theme here is all about how to run small businesses, how to excel in your small businesses. So start us off by telling us about your own.
Sure. So I have my consulting firm. It's always my dream to have my own consulting firm, to do my own work, to hang out my own shingle. And so as we were ending the last term of the Obama administration, everyone was trying to figure out where they were going to land next. But I always knew I just wanted to do my own thing, especially since I was now a wife and a mother. And I just knew I wanted some of the flexibility to determine my own schedule. So I really thought about what my expertise was, and with a lot of faith and just belief in myself, I launched Wopila Consulting, where we do government contracting, training and technical assistance, leadership and organizational development, as well as policy and program development.
What are some of the success stories? Because I imagine you take on so many projects, right? But what are some of the success stories that you like to talk about?
So I really like partnering with the client and with the tribal community, because for me, it's not about me coming in trying to fix or solve a problem. It's about me trying to understand what the challenges are and then finding creative solutions that meet those needs of that particular community or tribe. And when it comes to policy, it's also thinking about, okay, strategically, how can we do this if we need to accomplish this on a national level? Where do those relationships exist? And what is the current political climate? So it's a lot of different moving pieces, but as long as the client and community's needs are being addressed in a way that that satisfies what their goals are and is done in a way that is still honor and respect the community and cultural values, norms, and standards, then I consider that to be success.
Yeah, and we hear that so often in Indian country, right? Like tribes know their communities best, and it sounds like that's what you're saying as well.
Absolutely. Even as a tribal person, I don't feel comfortable coming in and saying, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is how it's going to get done. And people don't want that anyway. They just want someone that can listen to them and help them figure out the best way to meet their needs.
When we're talking about running and operating a small business, I mean, you are one of the people who's actually doing that. And when we look at the data nationwide, Native small-owned businesses is, really low in comparison to other numbers, but specifically female, women-owned Native businesses is even lower.
Well, I think a lot of times we think about what we don't know and allow that to prevent us from moving forward. What we really need to think about, what are our strengths, what are we great at, and lean in that way. And own what you don't know and find someone that can help you in those particular areas. We are so, I think just as a people, so eager to help and support others, but sometimes we have to reinvest in ourselves and think about what is best for me and my particular family.
So if there was a female watching this interview and said, I have an idea for a small business, I mean, where should they start?
So I think if they're here at Res, that's the great first start. There are a lot of resources in Indian country, but also within the Small Business Administration that really allow us to understand, okay, how do we create a business plan? What do the financials need to look like? How do we forecast and project what our particular needs will be within our small business, and how do we meet them? And how do we hire? What do we need to do with regards to different policies? And learn what your state laws are, because you'll have to find a way to make sure you're meeting those when it comes to employment, HR, and other licenses you might need. So just learn as much as possible and talk to people that are doing something similar. Talk to those who've been in business for 25 years, those who've been in business for 2 months, because each of them will have a different perspective that you'll be able to adapt to meet your own particular community's needs and goals.
I'm really curious, when you're giving all of this advice, you came from government work, so I'm really curious how that sort of paved the way for this entrepreneurial spirit that you have.
Sure. So actually, I've always done public service until I started my own company. I worked at the National Congress of American Indians, and I was also at the National Indian Education Association. And so when I went into government, it was a political appointment. So I knew it was for a short term. And I was just trying to learn as much as possible about the different processes, timelines, hoops you have to jump over. But it also gave me an opportunity to really visit a lot of communities that I had not visited before, to learn about what their particular priorities might be. So for me, it was I saw a trend in that there was definitely training and technical assistance that needed to be done, but also how do we plan for sustainable and more long-term change, and that was a need in Indian country, and I'm hoping that we're filling some of those gaps.
We only have about 30 seconds left, so I hate to leave you on such a big question, but what's next for you?
That's a great question. We're continuing to grow Wopula Consulting. I have learned to really develop boundaries for myself with regards to what I can take on and what I cannot. And I think after this pandemic, it was a great time to be able to really stand still and evaluate everything that was happening within our communities, within our nation, but also personally, and find out what is essential for us as individuals. And for me, it is always going to be family, our Creator, God, as well as finding a way to provide for all of those that I love. So Wopula is just going to continue to grow and expand, and hopefully find ways to make meaningful impacts.
Well, Lillian, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Every year, the National Center recognizes 40 Indigenous leaders under the age of 40. They are honored for their leadership, initiative, and dedication, and for making significant contributions in their community. Brian Polite has been recognized with this honor this year. He chairs the Council of Trustees for the Shinnecock Indian Nation. Welcome to the ICT Newscast, Chairman.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
So your nation gained federal recognition a few years ago. Tell us what's been done since you were granted federal recognition.
Yeah, so we got fully recognized back in 2010, although we were on path since 1978. So a lot of infrastructure building has taken place since 2010. We've been able to reform our constitution, create a federally chartered corporation called Shinnecock Sovereign Holdings, which has allowed us to diversify our economic revenue streams and really trying to build our nation for the future. And it's really helped with the federal funds, especially the ARP funds that just came in, really helped the nation move forward. And we wouldn't have been able to qualify for that without the federal recognition designation.
Right. The American Rescue Plan dedicated historic amounts of funding to tribal nations. What exactly did you use that funding for?
All kinds of different areas in our tribe. Mainly we gave economic stimuluses to those family members that needed it. We did an emergency home repair program that's wildly successful. We've been able to fix homes that have been dilapidated for so long, and it's been a really good injection of just money into a much needed tribal nation.
Talking about the coronavirus, I mean, how did your tribe fare during COVID? Did you lose any tribal members?
Unfortunately, we lost quite a bit of tribal members, and the community really pulled together. Obviously, being Native American and coming from an Indigenous community, we're more susceptible to pandemics. But the nation was able to really come together. We would be able to do food drives, we were doing deliveries, we were bringing people places. So we were able to keep our numbers relatively low, but unfortunately there were time periods, it's been over 2 years, so we did have upticks that saw quite a significant amount of tribal members be infected. But we were able to pull together as a community, and that's important. And we did lose some people, and that's very unfortunate.
Were any of the tribal citizens that you lost elders?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just like on the outside, the numbers and the people who were affected the most are the people and the elders. And in our community, just like in a lot of Indigenous communities, those are our national treasures. So not only was it a family member passing away, it was also a historian passing away, a person with great knowledge.
Right. And we've seen that all across Indian countries.
Absolutely.
It's devastating and heartbreaking. I want to ask you about sacred site protection, because I understand that your nation's currently trying to save some sacred sites located in the Long Island area. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so we have a Graves Protection Warriors Society that fights very hard. It's a group of tribal members that, with the support of the government, has really been challenging not just the state of New York, but the local municipalities as well. We have a very historic site that has over 3,000 to 4,000 burials. And in my community where I come from, it's called the Hamptons. So you have mansions on top of these sacred sites of ours, and they've really been fighting the Graves Warrior Protection Society, and they've been successful. They've been able to get the town of Southampton to purchase some of these properties, and so that we could restore some remnants of peace for our ancestors.
Right, and you are located in the Hamptons, and we see so often in the news, big corporations or millionaires trying to buy homes, and it sounds like you're like, this is my homeland.
Yeah, absolutely. They were also able to get a bill passed through the town that gave added protection, even though it's not quite there yet. We're also working, and we could use everybody's support in the state of New York. We're trying to pass a Graves Protection Act that will further help us protect our ancient burial sites. And it's a shame that we have to go through all of this, running around just to have our ancestors rest in peace. It's a tragedy.
Yeah. I'm really curious. So often in Indian country, we're hearing about land back and talking about, returning ancestral homelands to the tribal nations to which they belong. Are there any kinds of efforts right now for the Shinnecock Nation?
Absolutely. We have, again, a group of committed tribal members that are fighting to try to get what we call the hills back, which is a sacred area of the Shinnecock Indian Nation that was taken from us in 1859. Obviously not legally. We've been trying to fight that through the Supreme Court and just through public awareness as well and advocacy. And now we're moving on to just trying to buy the land land back and then, reclaim our ancient territory.
You're actually trying to buy your own land back.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
one form
Yep.
of getting your land back.
Correct.
Right? You're
Yes.
seeing that all over the country.
It's a lot easier than going to the courts, unfortunately.
Well, I want to switch gears because we, of course, are at Res 2022, and you're here to accept your award. What was your reaction when you found out that you won?
Deeply humbled, really. And it's kind of crazy because I'm 39, so I'm like right at the cusp. So it's a good way to go out of my 30s. It really is. And I was just deeply humbled. Indigenous communities across America for so long been put on the back burner of society, and seeing all of this res and all of this movement on economic development and diversification is awesome. I'm just proud to be a part of it.
Well, you just slid right in there at the last minute, so congratulations to you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit IndianCountryToday.com. From all of us here in Las Vegas, stay safe, my relatives. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.